Thank you, Chair. So I will, keeping and respecting time limits in mind here, I will be brief in my introductory remarks. No, is that not working? It's red.
Oh, it's right, okay.
Yes. Yes, as requested by council for a presentation with respect to the Barrie Police Service and the alignment of our strategic planning and goals with the cities, and to provide a more fulsome explanation of where we overlap or complement our larger cities' strategic planning goals. And with that in mind, I will quickly introduce Joshua Dunsworth, our strategic planner, to give a brief presentation, and we'll certainly take as many questions as you have afterward.
Okay, good evening. Good evening, Chair Morales, members of committee. Thank you for the opportunity to present in this forum today. My name is Joshua Dunsworth, and I'm serving as the strategic planner for Barrie Police Service. Now, our presentation today has two core objectives. First, to demonstrate how Barrie Police Service's strategic framework actively supports and advances the city's priorities. And second, to show how our performance measures directly tie to improve community outcomes. You'll see a phrase on the slide that holds true: unity in purpose and strength in partnership. Our strategic initiatives aren't developed in isolation, but they are deliberately aligned with city objectives to maximize impact and resource efficiency. I'd like to bring attention to the strategic priorities for both the City of Barrie and Barrie Police Service on this slide here. Our approach to serving Barrie combines strategic depth with operational excellence. We've integrated our three-part strategic plan with four core pillars: community safety and well-being, which you'll see there on the left part of that image. This isn't just about responding to crime, but preventing it through proactive engagement and addressing root causes. Community trust and respect. We recognize that public safety is built on a foundation of trust. Every interaction is an opportunity to strengthen community bonds. Professional excellence and wellness. Our service is only as strong as our people. We invest in their development and well-being to ensure superior service delivery. And innovation and operational efficiency. We're embracing data-driven approaches and new technologies to serve Barrie more effectively and efficiently. Each pillar was designed with the city's strategic priorities in mind, which you'll see on the left, ensuring our efforts multiply municipal initiatives. Now, through the Community Safety Committee lens, we view our role as both a direct service provider delivering core policing services and a strategic partner supporting broader municipal objectives. This dual role creates powerful opportunities that allow us to naturally align our metrics with city outcomes and create meaningful synergies between police and city initiatives. This alignment allows us to maximize the impact of every investment in public safety while supporting the city's broader objectives for community well-being. When we map our activities against city priorities, we see 5 key areas of alignment and the frameworks that underpin our respective plans: affordable living, community safety, building a thriving community, supporting infrastructure investments, and responsible governance. These aren't just parallel tracks, they're integrated approaches where police activities directly support and enhance city initiatives. Over the next few slides, I highlight where we directly and indirectly support these priorities of the city. Now, these slides are structured in such a way where we have city goals, examples of them on the left, depending on your vantage point of this. And on the right side, we have Barrie Police's. Now, for affordable place to live, Barrie Police Service is dedicated to keeping communities safe through concerted efforts such as CPTED audits, that's crime prevention through environmental design, in target neighborhoods. We have proactive policing towards prevention of crime. And by creating safer communities, we open up an environment to attract talent, increase jobs, and allow for additional local spending. Community safety. is the core of our responsibility. We are passionate about our data-driven deployment, which focuses resources where they're needed the most. We've adopted high visibility patrols, including a focus on the downtown core. Our traffic management tactics balance enforcement with education. These transformative efforts enable us to make smarter, more targeted decisions that truly enhance community safety and trust. Thriving community. We are committed to our community, and this slide highlights some photos of our members in the community making a difference. We have many community engagement programs aimed at creating dialogue and understanding. We have growing partnerships with community organizations, such as the newly announced CARE team. This CARE team allows for a paramedic and mental health worker to be dispatched for certain call types in specific situations. Infrastructure investments. Barrie Police Service actively supports this goal of the city in partnership by keeping public spaces and roads safe during periods of critical infrastructure improvements. We share the city's commitment to environmental stewardship, and we're acting on it by integrating electric and hybrid vehicles as well as e-bikes into our fleet. Responsible governance. Both of our organizations respect and uphold the importance of transparency and accountability to our public. Shown on this slide, we have transparent data sharing, our annual report, community safety data portal, community safety survey, our board presentations, budget presentations, all available to the public. And in fact, coming soon, we'll have a guided walkthrough of our community safety data portal on our Community Safety and Wellbeing Officer social media page. So stay tuned for that. We make data-driven, research-backed decisions that enhance our fiscal responsibility and operational efficiency. By being transparent with our data, we invite accountability and encourage open dialogue with the community. Now, let's shift our attention to our strategic and performance measurement approach, which is intentionally sophisticated, as it utilizes a tailored, hybrid approach that combines best practices from different areas. We have goals, activities, objectives, and performance, or this GAOP framework, which is used for strategic alignment. We have a balanced scorecard, the principles from it towards performance measurement. We use OKRs, which are objectives and key results towards our goal setting. We use visual modeling as a tool for stakeholder engagement, and Six Sigma principles for process improvement. Unlike private organizations, we have specific operational and community-focused goals that require us to balance accountability, public transparency, and adaptability in a high-stakes environment. Our KPIs are designed to measure both activities and outcomes. We have leading indicators which track our activities, examples being proactive patrols, proactively detected harm or harm that's been prevented, community engagement events, training and development programs. We have lagging indicators which measure our impact. You'll see examples of high harm crime, community satisfaction, traffic collision rates, and you'll notice our consistent 5% improvement target across our metrics. Now, while 5% might appear modest, it's intentionally set as a gateway to deeper analysis, not a final destination. For example, 5% shift in our harm-based crime rates just isn't a number. It prompts us to ask crucial questions. What types of crimes are driving this change? Are we seeing shifts in different neighborhoods? What underlying factors are at play? The 5% threshold acts as a trigger point for deeper investigation and understanding. It's not about hitting a number. It's about understanding the story behind that number and taking informed action. This approach ensures we're not just chasing percentages, but truly understanding and responding to our community's evolving needs. The metrics span across 14 categories within our 4 strategic framework priority areas, giving us a comprehensive view both of our activities and the impacts on community safety and well-being. As we move to our internal metrics, you'll see how our commitment to improvement extends inside our organization. Our professional excellence and innovation KPIs are particularly crucial because they drive our capacity to deliver better community outcomes. We track everything from employee wellness and EDI initiatives to technological adoption and process improvements. Why? because internal excellence directly translates to external service delivery. When our people are well supported and our processes are efficient, we are better positioned to serve Barrie effectively. I'm having clicker-related issues, but I'll close off by saying the Barrie Police Service's strategy is fundamentally aligned with city objectives through clear strategic alignment, measurable performance indicators, data-driven decision-making, community-focused approaches. We're not just supporting the city's vision, we're helping making it a reality. Every metric, every program, and every initiative is designed to create a safer, more prosperous Barrie. Thank you for your time. And Chair Morales, I hand it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunsworth, for the presentation. Before I open it up to members of committee, I just want to ask one quick clarification question. This might be a limitation because, that camera's off. This might be a limitation because I'm online, so if it's apparent to everybody there, my apologies. When you showed the 5% increases, decreases, etc., it said sample on the corner. So those weren't actually the real metrics. That was just a visual representation of the kind of different benchmarks that are applied, or were those the actual benchmarks applied? Just before I hand it off to the committee, I want to clarify that.
Through you, Chair, great question. So we've included actual samples and real metrics from what we are using. The reason you'll see sample indicated is because our KPIs are a work in progress. You'll see changes and transitions in what's happening. You'll see new additions. And I wanted to highlight that. But as a good question, we do have real examples of KPIs that we do use today.
Okay, so those numbers were more like date and time, like the benchmarks as of now, which obviously can change like in a month or so, right? Date and time.
Correct. So the 5% goal that we're pushing towards is something that we strive for over the year. So you'll see day over day measurements that we have month over month, week over week, and year over year.
Interesting. Okay. Perfect. Thank you for that. I will now go to members of committee first, and if somebody can, oh, there we go. I can't see. So Ms. Cook, I'm going to have to rely on you to be my eyes on this, if you can. Any members of committee have any questions?
Chair Morales, Councillor Corser has questions.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Councillor Corser, you have the floor.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Morales, to our guest. So the sample data points, this is as much detail as we're going to receive. Is a 5% lagging or leading? Are we going to have any more deeper dive into information than what is presented here for KPIs?
Through you, Chair. So for this question, if you are looking for more information, we are happy to provide more information. Each one of these KPIs or metrics has several sub-metrics below them that move the needle on them. So this, based on the time allowed, was the best way to showcase what we have KPI-wise. But absolutely, we have further data to dive deep into it.
Okay, thank you, because as the chief knows, I like data. Okay, can you give an example of how you've mentioned digging deeper to understand the root causes? Can you give an example of one time that you've used a KPI and done that? Anything that standed out that passed, if it's not confidential, to ask such a thing?
Yeah, so absolutely. We use it as part of our day-to-day deployment. And I'll speak now, and Chief, I'll ask you to support me should need be, but we have part of our harm spot and hot spot deployment that we use day in, day out, where we use this data that comes in day over day and week over week to help direct decisions on why we do what we do. And that's just but one of the examples of how we dive deep and use these KPIs and what they're doing to move the needle. I'll highlight another example within the traffic space. So we have several metrics within traffic. And if we recognize that we're striving towards a certain goal and perhaps we're trending where we're not going to meet the goal that we have, then we're able to have discussions on whether or not we need to increase efforts in that area. So we use this type of data to really drive decisions and what works best, of course, with other factors or circumstances as part of the consideration.
Okay, just one more question, if I may. How often, I guess you said on a day-to-day basis, so how often are the data points measured and reviewed? So is it a daily meeting briefing? Is it a weekly, monthly meeting that you sit down and dig into the numbers, or is this a ever-evolving, ongoing conversations?
So I'd say it's through your chair, a mixture of all of that. So the data points are available all the time. We use internal software that tracks this, and we have this ability to see what's going on, and each team has the ability to go through and see. And of course, when meetings happen, discussion points come up where these matters are all part of it. So it depends. There are so many different areas of discussion that it happens very, very frequently.
Oh, sorry, just to follow up on that. So is most of the officers, do they have access to this information as well?
Through you, Chair. No, but the supervisor at the staff sergeant level and the inspector level.
Okay.
But appreciating in specifics here, while it can be part of that daily conversation, the reality is we're looking around at, in terms of a deployment, and the example was used for like hotspots. So if we see part of the metrics we're looking at is the number, we know crime is not spatially evenly spread nor temporally, so we're looking at if we start to see a decline in the number, the metrics of how many hotspot checks are being done, so that's a proactive policing, that is corrected through operations. And again, with those respect to our crime analysis, which is done daily and looked at weekly and monthly, and reported to our board every 4 months in terms of to get more of a trending line. That's looked at in terms of, are we starting to see harm start to creep up in certain locations which we've targeted, and then why, and then applying that the metric with respect to hotspots, we need to increase presence there, knowing the deterrence effect from deterrence theory. So they are looked at in a very operational level, and that's the best example for that. Certainly there's traffic examples as well. So
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Corser. Any other, Deputy Mayor Thompson? I think, oh, you popped up. There we go. I think we've found a solution. So if this ever happens again, just turn on your microphone and the camera will show the virtual chair. Deputy Mayor Thompson, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Morales, and thanks for the presentation. And I sit through a lot of these meetings and I get the data on a monthly basis and stuff. I was just curious, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that Councillor Jim Harris has fulfilled the program of the evidence-based policing, and there's just a section in it where it's not only, it's proactive data, where we create our own data. For example, a big box store, if they hire 20 theft prevention officers, they're going to probably, the numbers of theft would probably go up because they're actually, so are we doing anything along those lines where we're generating our own by the hotspots, so the number will spike a little bit because we're targeting an area or something like that?
through you, Chair. Oh, my heart's warm. That's good stuff. And I say that because that's exactly what we are doing with respect to. So you can just count all crime as equal, and like how it's identified, how it's reported, but it's not done that way. So when a victim calls the police, that is reactive, our response. We can't be everywhere always, and we know that. We try to, but we can't. And so when they call in, that's community-based harm. When you're talking about proactive harm, that should be measured separately, and that's the argument we use. And there's some theoretical backing to that. And the argument there is, if we're actively out there doing proactive vehicle stops, and crime is discovered, i.e. location of narcotics or firearms in cars during a vehicle stop, which is proactively identified, that's technically still harm, but it's proactively detected versus someone calling us saying a robbery just took place with a firearm, which is far, and it's not that it's not concerning the firearm in the car. The reality is what was stopped as a result of proactive. And that honestly is where we want to see that continually increase our proactive efforts across the city. And that may be hotspots. That may be traffic hotspots where we know there's a disproportionate number of accidents that are very serious, which involve collisions and pedestrian strikes. But we want to see a continuation of that, because if you just count all crime, which is generally done in Canada, as just like sheer volume of crime, it punishes good police work. So if your people are out there and they're doing lots of vehicle stops and they're actively engaging with the community and they're trying to find crime, it actually looks worse than it is. If we put out ride programs every single night, we don't have the resource, but if we did that every single night, impaired driving isn't going up. Our detection of it is. It's about detecting crime, and it is recognizing good police work. So, and we are tracking that. We track community harm, traffic, proactive harm, as well as commercial-based harm. And to your point, Councillor, yes, if the detection systems or a great deal number of loss prevention officers are hired, it's not that theft is going up, it's being detected more. So where you put your resources, you get more bang for your buck. Hope that answers the question.
Perfect. And just to follow up, Chair Morales, do you find that the public are receptive to like hotspot policing and stuff? Are you like, and I know that you do lots of follow-up, lots of community engagement. Do you find like, you know, we've concentrated a little bit on the downtown with the visibility of policing and, you know, lots of different means, you know, with the side-by-side and stuff like that. Do you find like after a little bit of time when we have generated a hotspot after the fact and you're following up with, you know, businesses and stuff, are you finding that it's being received well?
So with respect to the crime harm, where we do have those hotspots, that is just to drive down that harm level. Where we are finding a great deal of impact, and this is separate than the harm, is social disorder. And social disorder is everything else that's not crime, but it affects people's sense of safety. And I'm looking at the council, and they're very well aware that we have some challenges in our city like we do everywhere in Ontario and in Canada. And people feel afraid sometimes. And it's a good problem for the police to have when people are happy to see us. We bring a sense of safety. We are seeing some good feedback in the downtown and appreciating our community wants to see more of us. If I could snap my fingers and triple the size of the service, I would. I recognize that's not possible, but I certainly do recognize, and I do recognize that, but I certainly, but the intent being people do feel safe when they see us, and our intent has been very purposeful in trying to be more visible in every way, shape, and form.
I'll end with this, Chair. If you look at Stats Canada and stuff, we were the safest city. So it's by a lot of things. It's community partnerships and good policing. So thank you for what you do for the community.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. Any other members of committee have any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Any non-members of committee, if you have questions or comments, turn on your microphone. Councillor Harvey, go ahead. And then Councillor Kung go after Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Morales. Through you to the chief or the presenter. And this is something that obviously every first responder organization, whether it's in this province or across the country, is dealing with. So I just want to kind of highlight, just so that way it doesn't get kind of blown out a little bit, but on slide 15, when you deal with professional excellence and wellness, obviously there's more lagging than there is leading, and the ones that are lagging are not unique to the Barrie Police when it comes to other first responder organizations. And obviously being a people-driven organization, that is obviously a key piece to focus on in moving forward to be able to achieve all the other pieces of the organization when it comes to reducing harm and crime within our city, along with having the ability to be proactive along with reactive and deal also with the community engagement. When it comes to those things, what type of strategies do you either have currently in place or are considering putting in place to try and change those numbers so that way you've got more leading opposed to lagging? And I know that's probably a easier said than done thing, and obviously I understand it because I lived it for 35 years, but that's why I wanted to hone in on that, because obviously being a people organization, I think that's critical.
Yes, absolutely. Through your chair, so excellent point. And I think that's one of the key things that we look at is this balance between not just looking at what's happened and it's lagging and we're late to the game, but trying to find the right measures to put into place where we can move the needle mid-year if something's going wrong. I will call out that slide 15 has a subset of our metrics, so there are more. Yes, there were lagging, and there was a bit of intention behind that, so I'm glad that you caught that, because we do find that when we're over-indexed on lagging, we're a little bit late to the game. We have to wait till next year now before we can make some changes. So I think that's an area we've been looking at, is trying to find the best way to balance the amount of leading indicators we have in lagging so we can make an impact. So I'll pause here and I'll pass to the chief now to address.
And so specific to that, when we talk about and those indicators, the investment in wellness in this organization has been pointed and taken very seriously from the board down. There has been a concerted effort to create an environment where people feel valued and impactful. And we do know that it's a tough job out there, but if you feel valued within the organization, the performance of the work outside the doors goes a lot easier. And so there have been a number of new initiatives put in place. One in particular we're quite proud of, where we're reducing the stigma with respect to psychological help. And the intention is to see as many of our members simply speak to someone in psychiatric services, just to get baseline, just to normalize that behavior. Because psychological health is like physical health. It's just health. It's all about health. If you have healthy people, we're able to deliver a service to our community that we promised.
Great, thank you. And just to follow up to that, and it correlates with what we just talked about, but it's not specifically in your presentation. If you were to look at the pre-pandemic calls for service, whether like proactive and reactive combined, to the calls for service that you're seeing in 2024, would you say that it's very similar numbers, or have we seen an increase overall in the calls for service, which would then obviously impact the amount of proactive, reactive, and administrative time allocated to those frontline officers that are typically the ones responding to those calls for service?
Excellent question, and through you, Chair. So we have seen a steady increase in calls for service when we call CAD-created events. But again, as an innovative service, we have looked and we have put into place a number of initiatives to address that. We do have an alternate response unit. There's online reporting, but there's also now virtual calling that we are testing out. So you can call into the police, you can have a conversation via Zoom, a Zoom-like service or a FaceTime. And so to alleviate some of the pressures on the front line with respect to those calls for service. We also, and I believe it was noted in the presentation, the care team. This is one of 3 places in the province this is being tested. And that's with a paramedic and a member, a crisis worker from the Canadian Mental Health Association in the Simcoe branch, attending the call instead of the police with a mental health call, which is one of our leading drivers of our call volume. And so bringing the right people for the right call at the right time. And at the end of the day, our outcome is resolution for the individual making the call or in crisis. And perhaps that's better delivered by, sometimes it's not the police. And so they're using the 911 service is the 911 service. So while we may dispatch that, we won't be attending unless there's a need for our services. And again, keeping in mind, certain circumstances have to exist. There cannot be any weapons present, and the violent behavior is not present either. So, but it's still a sizable number of the calls.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Congo.
Thank you, Chair Morales. Through you, thank you, Chief, and thank you, Mr. Dunsworth. I appreciate the presentation. And maybe to lead off in some of the conversation about well-being and some of your metrics, getting a lot of positive feedback out of Ward 3 in particular. And so in case when we talk about metrics and performance and objectives, if sometimes I find, you don't hear about the good stuff that's happening. And so when we talk about that community safety and well-being, I can't say enough about the focus of attention through Constable Brooks and the community safety and well-being team, who've also been exceptionally responsive with some of our businesses in situations that have or have not hit the media, just around making sure there's an attention to conversations and also that shared responsibility about what can be done. So the training that you're doing around the evidence-based policing all the way down to, I believe it's CEPTED. So you're looking at the environment and giving suggestions. And I know that's actually been received well, and some businesses have taken on different investments that seem to be quite effective around creating that kind of proactive encouragement to kind of prevent a crime from even having. So, taking the incentives away. So I think that's been an incredible resource, one that's been in person, and I think has also felt that there is a great positive police presence. So thank you for that. That's an incredible resource. On the KPIs specifically, I had two questions. And one was, I'm assuming that somewhere in the KPIs, and if I missed it, there is that kind of time from point of call to point of service, I'm assuming. So we see it in paramedics a little bit, right? So time of response and with fire. I didn't know if that's looked at specifically, or if police look at kind of the time frame around being able between certain levels of, I guess, maybe weighted issues of concern, whether it's high harm situations or significance, if you've got metrics that talk about a time frame for responding. And this came to mind the other day. I believe it was Mayor Chow out of Toronto, might have been on CBC Radio recently, talking about, from a public service announcement, the amount of 911 calls that are coming in that really are not truly 911. They're probably better with a non-emergency call number. And I know we communicate that a lot as counselors to members of the public who still might verbally say, I feel like I should just call 911 because this isn't an emergency. And I'm like, it might feel like an emergency to you, but really not an emergency in the bigger picture. So I didn't know, I think she quoted something over 50% or more of 911 calls really could have been deferred. I might have that wrong, but do we look at our 911 calls around appropriateness for 911, and do we also look at our time to respond?
Through you, Chair, so we do actually look at our 911 calls. And in terms of, I'll add one more into that list, is 911 hangups. And so gone is the BlackBerry, if anyone's that old, but certainly the iPhone and Google products as well. Sometimes that emergency button is held down and it auto dials us as well. And so that is one of our leading calls in terms of 911 hangups or 911 in error. And I don't have those directly in front of me, but certainly that is a challenge for us. Our communication staff are immediately reaching out, and we're always determining whether that's, and we have a priority system, much like fire, and I'm sure like and I know from the paramedics, priority 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, in terms of priority for life. And so priority 0, that response time is going to be minimal, and we can certainly, I can bring that back to the committee, but it's minimal. Even time to answer the call is under the national standard in the U.S., which is we exceed here. This in terms of the call response is quite. We exceed it in terms of our ability to answer fast. So we are meeting that, but in terms of the actual numbers, I don't have them with me.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. And don't need the numbers, but wanted to understand if that was embedded in some of the KPIs we're looking at. And again, just more from a public awareness and getting out the message too about when you're thinking about you're in a situation, who to call, like that discretion about when that's appropriate, or just helping to make sure that police are getting the calls that really need that urgency. I've had the benefit of taking the evidence-based policing through Cambridge, and I mention that only because it does help to have that background to really understand, because we are talking about deeper analytics and a whole different language tied to this and thinking through this. So I would encourage anyone to be looking at that actually, and have appreciated that conversation is shifting for the public too. So it was really exceptional that in some of the town halls, you've been bringing your team from the analytics side to start talking a bit about safety in communities by ward, both traffic, but also like starting to also incorporate the language of hotspots. And when we're talking a bit about, high number of calls, but really what does that look like from a harm and a responsiveness, and where you want your policing resources to go. So I think that message is starting to get through around an understanding of your approach. I know it's great to see through your presentation, Josh, how you're actually reflecting some of that whole different language and approach into it. I know Barrie Police have recently been complimented in some spaces I've been at, both through the Cambridge academic system, but also through other police detachments around the recognition of the different approach you're taking, Chief, and how that's actually becoming integrated into Barrie Police Services. So I just want to say it's great that the KPIs are coming forward, but also just to recognize that's not, one, it's not an easy thing to do, but two, you're doing it also with a lot of different integrity coming at it from a whole different view of policing. So I think it's wonderful. My only other question is around your strategic directions on priorities tied to traffic and enforcement and safety. I'm not sure where this sits, both in if there's a KPI or if it's becoming more of a newer area of focus to look at responsiveness to. And the biggest conversations from active transportation in our sustainability committee and others are really about on-road safety. So we know we get questions about bike lanes and appropriate use of bike lanes. You know, why are cyclists still on sidewalks? But now it's about e-scooters or other types of, I would just say, whether it's electronic or not, motorized systems that allow people to take something other than a car, but have different governors. So, I mean, you could be looking at a 25-kilometer threshold or 40 to 50-kilometer threshold. And where you're at on the road or your visibility, I think, is raising a lot of questions around how do I be a good owner-operator if I want to get into a scooter and use it to commute? And then, you know, what are my rights on the road, but also am I going to get in trouble for kind of taking a safety approach to taking something on a sidewalk? So I'm not sure if that's coming more into public relations and communication, or if it's coming into safety and response and complaints that you're getting.
So through you, Chair, Councillor, so I think that's a nice segue, though, into terms of something for us to take back and go to our communications, because I think, generally speaking, the majority of our community does want to abide by the rules, does want to go about their daily business without interfering with other people and just playing by the rules. And so certainly we'll bring that back, and I think our corporate and strategic communications can certainly put out in a meaningful way, digestible information that people can go, oh, I didn't know that, or yeah, I need to do this. And so I thank you for that, because I think that's the majority of us just recognize the social contract that we all understand when we live in a community, that we kind of have to respect everyone else, and it's just easier when we all know the rules.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Chief. Thanks, Josh. I don't have any more questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Kungle. I have Councillor Harris and then Councillor Hamilton and then Councillor Rietma.
Thank you, Chair Morales, and thank you, Mr. Dunsworth and Chief Johnston. Yeah, it's always great to hear about the efforts that are going into making our policing more efficient, more effective, and more economic. And I was wondering on the economic side, and I know evidence policing, it's about better policing, not less or more police, it's about better policing. But I was curious as far as on the metrics, if some of the metrics, and I can maybe, like hiring metrics, absence of mental health metrics, those really are about the economics, you know, of the cost of policing with, as it relates to, do you have is turnover rate one of the hiring metrics that you have on the professional excellence and wellness? And wondering as far as, you know, is turnover an issue? But I obviously know that mental health absences, is that your number one absence, is mental health related absences?
Sorry, through you, Chair, to the Councillor, of our members off, like with respect to them not being well?
Yeah.
So we are looking at that rate, but more from very much in an economics term, with a percentage of our staff that is off due to stress. But again, that's, and I don't think we had that up in the metrics, but it's not, it's not a sizable number, but we want our people to get better, but there is a cost to that, and it does exist. That's a challenge I think we face, but along with many other services, yeah, that's we keep a close eye on that, because at the end of the day, that's also the canary in the wharf for the rest of the organization. And if people are going off because of stress, that could be a whole host of reasons. Yes, exposure to trauma out on the road, but and how the organization is working with them to deal with that, and our investment in wellness programming. It's not about cost. It is about cost effectiveness, but it's also about speed of transition. So if someone is challenged with some things. How fast are they coming back to work, or do they feel comfortable coming back to work? And we've seen that, and I can anecdotally, I'll say that now, is that we've seen a drastic reduction in time off. With respect to those who've gone off from years ago, coming back is very challenging, but more recently, when we see people go off for those reasons, their return to work is far shorter, and to get them back into the mix, or where we can leverage their skill set.
Yeah, and it's great to see the effort that goes into wellness, and the benefit is people are well, but the secondary is that it's an economic gain as well for the organization and those who fund it. Just curious, great to see again your commitment to data and evidence-based policing and making informed decisions. It is a big investment. It's a big investment for the City of Barrie and in our policing, and we want to do it as effectively as possible, and we see you taking that approach. In the grander scale of policing, I think one of the challenges that we have as municipal councils when budget time comes is it's hard to compare, police services, the cop to pop ratio. We know and respect that ours has always been one of the lower ones, so we thank the effort that goes into not being the highest cop to pop ratio in the province. Our accreditation standards, again, as we see evidence and research becoming part of the policing milieu, are accreditation standards kind of coming? Is that in the near future?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor, I would like to say yes. I think as a community council, as a city council, as across Ontario, let alone Canada, I think there should be an expectation. We've seen it in the UK with respect to they have that rating and their set measurements, and certainly part of that goes to more challenging, not just leading and lagging metrics, which are numbers, but they don't tell a more fulsome story with respect to legitimacy and how the people feel in their community. Do they feel that the police treat them with respect? Do they give them a voice when they interact with them? I mean, there's metrics, and then there's and the research around what are some probably more in-depth metrics, but need to be done. But we live in a country where while public safety is federal, the delivery of it's provincial, and it's done at a municipal level. So it's getting everyone in the same room and deciding on what are the metrics, and understanding the context of Barrie is not the same as the context in middle of Alberta and down east in Prince Edward Island. I mean, it's very challenging, but I would argue I would like to say they're in the mix, but this is a sad line, but it's above my pay grade. I don't know. I'm sorry.
You're so lucky to have all three levels of government concerned about what you do. That's wonderful. Just maybe one, because I'm curious, and people have mentioned evidence-based policing. I hope you mind me asking. I know we've talked about harm spots and hot spots. The power few, whether it be people or places, is that something also that drives some of these metrics behind and underneath as far as dealing with those efforts?
It is. We have a specific unit with respect. So the hot spots are places. There is a power few within our community, and that is addressed appropriately with that unit that is specific to those individuals that repeatedly cause harm in our community, and that interaction on behalf of the police with them to communicate that and to let them know that we are present and we are aware. So that is very much a part of it, but the research is quite strong there. So for us to not invest in that, it would be, wouldn't be a great idea. We know it exists, and so we are actioning it.
That's great. Yeah, I figured there would have been, but I just wanted to be able to share that because that's really important. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Morales. Sorry, also virtual tonight and feeling under the weather. But thank you, Chief and Mr. Dunsmore, for the presentation. I appreciate seeing sort of the depth and breadth of the KPIs that you guys are tracking in the alignment with the city strategic objectives as well. I would tend to agree with Councillor Corser that it is a little bit hard to really kind of understand where we're performing well and where perhaps we need improvement just based on how the data is presented and just sort of seeing a snapshot of whether we're leading or lagging. But in terms of, the number of lagging indicators, and this isn't just criticize, but just looking at it, if I was on the board, my next question would be, well, what are we doing then in these areas that are lagging? What are the strategies that we're identifying or developing? Specifically, I was interested in the positive interactions with community and looking at some of the lagging KPIs there, the feedback on the community safety survey, the community interaction satisfaction rate. Like, to those are really key ones for my perception in terms of how the community is feeling about policing in our communities. And then, so the first question really would be, can we hear a little bit more about the strategies to improve where we're lagging? And then secondly, how does this information then inform the budget and how we're investing the police budget? Because as you said, where we target money, that's where we see results. And so how do we use all this data to really inform then where we should be investing in our funds?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Hamilton. So when we look at specifically with respect to community interaction and their perception and of the police, we are focused on that and appreciating it can sometimes be an impossible balance. We look at when we looked at our last annual community safety survey, the number one concerns, for example, in the downtown, in terms of the top three, none of them were criminal in nature. But people feel unsafe. But they feel unsafe for a non-criminal event or a non-criminal circumstance that takes place. So we are challenged in terms of how well we explain to our community what's actually going on and what we can do about certain things. Social disorder, homelessness, and that presence in different parts of our city, in particular, sometimes in the downtown, people feel unsafe about that. But it's not that they are unsafe, but they feel unsafe. And so we are challenged when you take metrics and you put them, and it's like, that doesn't tell you are people unsafe in the downtown? No, it's quite safe. We will have crime anywhere in any collection of population. It exists. Criminal deviance exists in any society, but Barrie is a safe city. And the challenge we have is, how do we communicate that better? We do recognize, and I will come back to the point that our community likes to see us. And so we looked at the downtown, we're aware of it, but how do we better address it? Clearly, there was a positive response to seeing more of us. So not just staying with that, but how do we improve that even more? And so we are exploring that.
Thank you. Just on that, before you get to the budget piece and how perhaps this data will inform budget conversations, in terms of the presence, can you just comment again, I think, the past 6 months, 8 months, how you've increased police presence in the downtown and what those numbers were before and what they kind of look like now, just as a reminder for us? Certainly.
So prior to the summer project and the pilot project, again, it was more response-based. The lack of particular hotspots of violent crime in the downtown didn't detail the fact that they want that overt presence as much. But with respect to the downtown now, you have both sworn and special constables in the downtown. And again, their presence is not simply driving through. It is assigned to the downtown. They're wearing high visibility clothing. They're leveraging different types of vehicles. You saw them in the UTV, the bikes out, and obviously in the nicer weather, but certainly as we get into changing weather patterns, you're going to see them in vehicles again, but also on foot. And certainly we've seen that. So we had fewer, but now with another, we're up to 6 plus another 2 from our community safety survey, our community safety team being down there as well, helping out. But then we're also exploring, and to your point with the budget, that we are going to explore our ability to leverage that further to have a bigger footprint in the downtown. And I would certainly speak to that through my board before I can speak further to get blessing. So.
Thank you. Fair enough. I know we're still early on in any budget talks. I just want to make sure some of this data is informing that, because to me, as you said, I get safety as a perception, and maybe it's how we define the term safety. I know our downtown is safe, but I will say, as a frequent person, someone who frequents the downtown quite often, I have noticed an increase in police presence, and I absolutely appreciate it. I would still say, there's evenings and weekends where I don't feel it as much. And yes, I feel safe, but I will say the other day I went to the gym at 5 a.m. and someone knocked on my window as I was about to get out of my car. asking for money, and when I, didn't open my car door, they're yelling belligerent at me. Did I feel unsafe? No, but it's 5 a.m. I'm by myself. I'm a female. It's dark. And so I do think, we really do have to listen to the community, whether or not, Barrie is a safe city or not. If the perception is that it's unsafe or I'm feeling uncomfortable, that goes a long way. And we really need to look at what can we do to start making people feel more comfortable then, if safe isn't the word we want to use. And what does that presence look like down there in order so people can actually feel it, see it, and are aware of it. So thank you. I think you guys are doing absolutely great work. Again, as I said, I like to see the data that's being collected. I'd like to see a little bit more of it so we can really look at where perhaps performance could be improved or enhanced, and how then we can divest money to flow to those areas in a more meaningful way. But thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Hamilton, and I really like your reframing of safe versus comfortable. It's a very nuanced perspective and very important. Councillor Reitman.
Thank you, Chair Morales. And thank you, Chief, for being here and for giving us this presentation. I really appreciate it. And one of the things that I think your organization really deserves a pat on the back for is the Citizens on Patrol. That part of your organization, I think, builds tremendous amount of goodwill for the police. I've had it a number of times in my ward, and it's really helped a lot. And I think as Councillor Morales or Councillor Hamilton indicated, perception is of safety. Perception is reality, and I think that organization, that part of your organization, really does help with the perception part of it. I just wondered, we as a city have installed a number of speed cameras, and we move them around. Any thoughts from your perspective on how that's working, and how does that impact what the police do in that area?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Reitman. Thank you for the Citizens on Patrol, and certainly I would encourage council members, if there's a complaint in your community, please reach out to our community safety officer, Constable Kira Brooks, and we can make arrangements. And so I'll start with that. With respect to the speeding cameras, I put my feelings aside, and not in a bad way, but I will say the data speaks for itself. And so you see a reduction, and I know our city is quite diligent in that measurement. And so, and kudos to the city for getting those and putting them in place and seeing that ongoing reduction. On behalf of the Barrie Police Service, when we talk about our role in traffic safety, it is that, traffic safety. I mean, at the end of the day, we measure success for us in terms of reduction of serious motor vehicle collisions and pedestrian strikes. Those are that's when the roads are safer, when you have fewer people being injured and fewer serious car accidents. Now, speeding will occur, but, and I believe those cameras are quite functional at that. I think there's a huge value there in terms of when we measure traffic safety, where we see most of our challenges are certainly obviously intersection related, and that's where vehicles aren't moving straight. There's some movement of the vehicle in one direction or another, and that's where we see some of our more serious issues. But beyond that, from what I've seen from the data, they are reducing speeds, and so anything that keeps our roads safer certainly has the police vote.
Just to follow up, Mr. Chairman, would red light cameras, in your view, help that situation?
I think any traffic initiative that reduces accidents and pedestrian strikes and causes people to be far more alert with their driving habits is supported by a public safety organization. How can we say no to just whatever keeps our roads safer and gets people home safe at night? That's the true measure of effectiveness.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reitman. And just to clarify, Chief, to that last question, anything that makes roads safer obviously is supported. But I'm assuming that wasn't a blanket support for them. And I just want to clarify because I don't want to presume. My experience was back in 2016, 17, Ms. McAlpine will help me remember this, I'm sure. There was like a 2-hour presentation from herself on the pros and cons of red light cameras and the data and the costs and the court system, the procedures. And so is it fair to say that the answer you gave to Councillor Rietma was just like anything that would be supportive? So if the data were to support it, that's one thing, but it wasn't like, yes, please give me red cameras, which are different than the automated speed enforcement in school zones. Is that a correct interpretation? I just don't want to leave.
So Chair, thank you for the question. I just, as the cameras are city owned, I certainly wouldn't presume to tell the city what to do. I just didn't want to step in beyond my lane, just with respect to the cameras, that would be a strategic decision that the city made. I
love that. No, that's awesome. I appreciate that answer a lot. I sometimes the information we get is as valuable as sometimes just being told we don't know at this time. So I believe Councillor Corser, you have a follow up to the discussion. Go ahead, Councillor Corser.
Yes, thank you for indulging me. I did have, after the conversation, a couple of things popped up in my mind. One of them is because you are evidence-based, and I love that. Now, how do you balance that? This is such a hard question because you're a public servant. So how do you balance that with what you had mentioned before about the difference between being, as the term was, uncomfortable as opposed to being unsafe, and where we invest our money and where we put our officers when they're needed? Because if you're running on evidence base and you're still having to balance public opinion at the same time, I think you're in a bit of an impossible situation, and I can certainly appreciate being on the hot seat for that. And I'm just wondering if there's any, within the force, is there any PR kind of information out there? Is there any messaging to the general public that is going forward with this sort of thing? Because one thing that I noticed recently is, I guess it's an old trend that's getting rebirth, is the knocking on doors and running away in the middle of the night. And that's not a 911 phone call. That's Nicky Nicky Nine Doors from when I was a kid, right? So it's just, the social media and the monster has made it so much of a bigger issue than I guess maybe it really should be. And I'm just wondering how that messaging goes out to the public, and how do you address that?
Through you, Chair. So, Councillor, that's an excellent summation of the challenge we face, and it is a difficult or an impossible balance. But it doesn't make, and I don't want to communicate to council and certainly to our community that that feeling uncomfortable or is, you know, it's not important. It's incredibly important. When we talked about national measures and provincial and even municipal measures of effectiveness, if you don't feel comfortable in your own city, that's not a good sign, and we recognize that. So again, with our presence, the idea is to increase that comfort level. You may not enjoy some of the challenges, socioeconomic conditions we have, but if, again, the presence of our special constables, of our sworn personnel in the downtown certainly affects people's perception of, you know, does that discomfort get reduced because they see more police presence? To your point with respect to social media, certainly we can put out as much information as possible. And the challenge we have today is, again, it's not something I'm recognizing that media today, social media, but all media, certainly is at times leveraged to create conflict. And it's unhelpful to a healthy community. And media sometimes just perpetuates that. And so that's a sad comment on our society, but certainly when we play an unwitting role sometimes, we do some great proactive work, and we should recognize our officers doing great work. But sometimes when you're inundated with that great work, then all you're seeing is our community members are seeing, you know, seizures of this, and it's great because we're working hard, but it makes you feel like it's everywhere and all the time, and it's not. It's not. We live in a safe city. And we will have challenges, but again, the organization is focused on making it safe and helping people feel comfortable as well, because it does matter.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Corser. Any other members? Councillor Nixon, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Morales, through you. Thank you to both of you for your presentation. Just want to touch briefly on the health and safety, the health issues with a lot of officers being off on stress related. First of all, we wish them all the best, and we want them to recover and be back on the job soon, because that's, I'm sure, where they prefer to be. But just to compare the numbers now, the amount that are off now, when you look at the actual number of boots on the ground that we have now as compared to, say, 2 years ago, with the with hiring of the new recruits this year, last year, has that kind of balanced things off, or are we still lagging?
Through you, Chair. So, Councillor Nixon, the challenge we face is, as a organization that is service focused, we'll have natural retirement levels, and so there's a replacement effort that's put in place there. I can say that those who do go off, they're more in the recent time, within the last year or two, their return to work is far shorter. Beyond that, people who've been off beyond that, their return to work has been there's more challenge there. And so when people are going off, it's for shorter periods of time. So when we look at addressing that with any type of response from in terms of new officers, it's to address the organization that was going short. We didn't replace them in the past, or just have someone step in to pick up that load while those officers were off. So our numbers are quite low compared to our comparators. And I won't speak to specifics, but certainly we're doing better than most. But it is still a challenge, because when someone's not there, someone else is working. So,
absolutely, thank you for that. And just a quick follow-up: you're finding in general, maybe not just in Barrie, but across the province, or maybe across the country, are we having more difficulty attracting new recruits into police work? Or are you finding the numbers that you're getting? I'm not quite sure how it works, whether they come through the college or whether they, send resumes, but are you finding that the numbers are about the same, or are you getting fewer people wanting to enter that profession?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Nixon. So we're with the new Community Safety and Policing Act, there is an allowance or an encouragement more toward you can have more special constables and leveraging them more appropriately, and certainly that's a segue into policing. But I would argue that when we're looking at policing today and into the future, perhaps we need to expand that lens. And I'm not saying that you may not see the Barrie Police show up at university sociology, psychology classes, but you might at Teachers College. What are the skill sets that we need for tomorrow and today and tomorrow for policing? And there's a physical aspect to the job, but yes, there's so much more to policing. It's so complex. And we talk about emotional intelligence, and there's a skill set that I think if we haven't targeted in the past, we need to target far more. And I don't mean that negatively. I think it's how we engage with our community, and it goes back to a national measure. If one of your measures is, how effective and how transparent and how you treat people with dignity matters, then we have to put some focus there. And Barrie Police is challenged with getting more people, but not. We're still getting door knocks that people want to come in and do this, because a life of service is something to hold up high.
Very good. Thank you very much.
That's a great life lesson to finish it up on. Councillor Degusi, I see your camera's on. Go ahead. And Councillor Degusi, the only thing is I don't want to cut you off, because I definitely want you to communicate your questions to the chief. I know you've been mindful on this subject in different capacities, but the only thing is I just got reminded by the clerk that we are over time. But Councillor Degusi, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Morales. Thank you, both of you, for the presentation. Chief, on slide 9, under thriving community, It talks about building trust, fostering a strong and more vibrant community. So can you tell us any specific new initiatives that are in the plan or can be implemented to strengthen the community in alignment with the goal of fostering a thriving population? Or what kind of specific initiatives do you have for community thriving? The reason why I ask is I just finished my yearly door knocking program, and there is a huge misconceptions among some residents that they are feeling unsafe. And I believe it is our responsibility to change that perception. So any new specific initiatives to address that issue?
So through you, Chair, to Councillor Negusi, I actually am, thank you for the question. And I will give you credit, sir. Maybe unbeknownst to you, but we just started the Citizen Academy again, Citizen Police Academy. And I do know that you had brought that up in previous years with respect to seeing that out west and the value that had in terms of encouraging people to not only participate, learn about the policing, and then they become certainly individuals to spread that information. That's just started up. I think we're in week 3 or 4. And recognizing that group is a very motivated group, a representative of our community that we're excited to present to and explain what we do and why we do it. And I would certainly point to the Citizens on Patrol, which program lagged in COVID times and almost shut down, but certainly has been reinvigorated and has the full support of this administration, the full support. These people are volunteers and they want to make their community safer. This service owes it to them to assist them in any way, shape, or form because they have such a great impact on our city. We're also certainly exploring and leveraging special constables. And so there's that ability to put those special constables on the road, highly visible, to assist the police in executing their duties. So they're not replacing police, but they certainly complement them. And I think there's a huge impact value there.
Just follow up, this is not a question, but a comment. Last year, exactly during summertime, I had a yearly visiting program, and #1 priority in Ward 6 was safety, traffic, those kind of issues. But this year, I just want to leave it up to you. Safety is one of the biggest concern in Ward 6, and I believe the rest of the city. So thank you so much for the presentation.
Cannot agree with you more, Councillor Negusi. Chief Johnson and to you and the other deputy as well. Thank you so much for your time presenting to council. So I believe those are all the questions that we have for right now for yourself and Mr. Dunsworth. So thank you for that. We will now move on. There's no standing items, there's no deferred items, just reports of advisory committees. So we have 6.1, report of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Advisory Committee dated October 15th, 2024. And I will read it as follows. The report of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Committee dated October 15th, 2024 be received. So can I have a member of the committee just
So moved.
put that on the floor? So moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson. Thank you very much. All those in favor, please indicate. I can't see. I presume that passes. So that is passed. There's no reports of officers, no item for discussion. So we will now adjourn. We are now adjourned at 7:12 p.m. And City General Committee will begin. Ms. Cook, could you just indicate a time for the record?
It probably will resume in about 5 to 10 minutes. We need a few minutes to reset the system.
Okay, perfect. So we'll say 7:22 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, everybody.